everybody. I'm going to hand you over to Matthew, and I'm going to stop playing this music and hand it over to Matthew, who will be chairing our session today. Thanks, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are. People from far and wide are here, I can see. Welcome to the second session of a series of webinars hosted by the Dóchas Safeguarding Working Group. We've been around for a few years as a group of practitioners in the sector, trying to build capacity and build a culture of safeguarding across our work and across our organizations. And this series of webinars was initiated to really try and move ourselves and our partners and colleagues beyond compliance towards implementation. And this second session today is entitled Working in Partnership, a local approach to strengthening safeguarding systems. And we've got a number of speakers who from Trócaire and some of their partners in Zimbabwe who are really bringing this into their work and sharing their experience with us today. So just some housekeeping before we really get going. This meeting is recorded, and you should have clicked and got it at some point to be on here, so just making you aware of that. I'd ask everybody to mute when they're not speaking. That helps keep the flow going. Feel free to post questions in the chat or raise a hand, but we'll do a more complete Q&A at the very end, and we'll respond to the questions at that point rather than at the end of each speaker. So yes, that's really where we're at, and we will start with a little who are we, who's in the room here, and Morgane has a poll, so you should see something appear on your screens in a minute. If you just respond to that, and we'll get a good idea as to who everybody is and where they're coming in from. So you've got about a minute now to respond to those couple of questions there.
Okay, thanks everybody for answering the poll. I'm just going to end it now and present it back so you can see who's in the room with us today.
Shall I carry on? Do you want to say anything about? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, a good breadth of people there, from some head offices, from some field offices, technical practitioners, safeguarding designated officers, and things. So it looks like we've got the right people in the room. So for the first presentation, I will hand over to Margaret Rooney. Margaret is the head of safeguarding at Trócaire, a word I struggle to pronounce correctly. Margaret's going to give us an overview of working together with partners on safeguarding. So over to you, Margaret. Great. I should say also, Margaret is the chair of the working group and is a tireless worker with us all in the group to drive these kinds of things. So over to you, Margaret.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Okay, I don't know whether you're actually seeing, hopefully you're seeing my presentation.
At the moment, we're seeing your whole PowerPoint thing.
Oh.
We're not seeing, now we're seeing you.
Okay, let me just try that again. I am having problems with my PowerPoint, so I don't know. No, that's not what you're seeing. Just give me one moment. Technically,
that was it, Margaret.
That was it. That was it. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. So fantastic. I think. Let me just see. I don't know how I'm going to move this now, though. I seem to be having technical difficulties here, so I might actually not share screen if it's not going to work very well. I can't actually. Morgane, I don't know. Do you have my PowerPoint there that you could actually move down the slides? But if not, don't worry. I'll just talk through our approach and what we've been doing. Sorry, I think I messed up earlier on because yeah, what I might try and do is this actually. Just give me one moment. Sorry, everybody. Now, let me just try a screen share now and we'll see how we get on.
I can share it for you here, Margaret, if you'd like.
Yeah, let me just, this should work now. Now, what are you seeing? No, you're not seeing it either.
Yeah, no, I can see that. That's great.
Okay, but I can't. So, yeah, I can't see it for some reason, so I'm not going to be able to guide you through it. So apologies.
I'll share my screen here, Margaret, if you'd
that
like.
Would be fantastic. Yeah. Thank you. That would be great. And then I can talk through. Great. Thank you. So if you want to pop down to the next slide, for some reason, nothing is working for me here. And so thank you. So first of all, just to start, here on the screen is Trócaire's definition for safeguarding. So Trócaire has well recognised our responsibility to keep people safe from exploitation and abuse within our programmes and activities, but also by the actions of those who represent Trócaire in any setting. So we constantly work to ensure that our culture and our systems are of the highest standards. Our safeguarding definition is broad to cover traditional child safeguarding, PSEA, safeguarding adults at risk, and sexual harassment against staff. This approach enables us to have preventative measures in place for everybody, as well as a response mechanism that works no matter what the nature of the potential exploitation and abuse is. So that's really our definition as such for safeguarding in Trócaire. Would you like to move on there, Morgan? Into the next slide.
Sorry, Margaret, this is your governance presentation. Apologies, everybody. I don't.
Okay, let me just forget about the Zoom presentation altogether, Morgan. I can just talk through it, so that's perfectly fine. So Trócaire's safeguarding definition is safeguarding is about protecting children and adults from harm within our programs and activities. And it includes the prevention of exploitation and abuse, as well as any harm caused by our failure to take reasonable care. In its broadest sense, it's also about ensuring that those who represent our organisation do not engage in behaviours that abuse or exploit others. So that's the definition that we use in Trócaire for safeguarding. So why do we do safeguarding? And I think if we go back to look at kind of the typical initial kind of rationale for doing safeguarding, and it was really linked into our commitment to do no harm, to make sure that when we are delivering our programs and activities, that we do not harm people in any way. But we've also seen, I think, a lot of scandals across our sector that have made us all sit up and sort of think, well, how are we doing safeguarding? Are we doing a good job on it? Do we need to go back and look at our policies, our systems, our structures, and really see, are we living up to that commitment of do no harm, our moral obligations to keep people safe, and our definitions of safeguarding? Are we really, really doing that? And I suppose that has created, quite a lot of discussion within the sector in relation to safeguarding. And particularly also we see that we also have a lot of due diligence requirements and compliance requirements with our donors, who have also said, we take our responsibility seriously and we want to hear how organisations are keeping people safe. So in Trócaire then, we also recognise that while we need to have good safeguarding practices in place, we've also recognised that as we are a partnership organisation, so Trócaire works mainly through partner organisations. We do not self-implement any projects. We work with partners across, right across the world in the countries where we work, who are delivering really incredible work locally, and so who we network with and engage with to actually deliver those programs. And that has always been our approach. And we recognize that our partners are the ones who are closest to communities, and potentially that is where the greatest risk of power imbalance lies. So for that reason, and in keeping with our commitments, we also strive to support our partner organizations on their own safeguarding journey. So in 2017, we updated our partner safeguarding grant agreement to be more explicit around our safeguarding requirements and what we would expect each partner organization to have in place. We recognize that, you know, this potentially is something that not everybody has in place. And so we began to work with our partner organizations to look and see where are they on their safeguarding journey, and to look and see what we could put in place. So we commenced a training program for senior managers and focal persons. But of course, we're not alone in doing that. We know that all organizations have safeguarding policies and partner grant agreements. And so for a number of our partners, we were not the only ones engaging with them on safeguarding. And so as we began to continue our safeguarding journey and listen to our partner organizations, we recognized that you know, there was lots of really good practice in place, but maybe that wasn't getting the label of safeguarding, but however, there was lots of good practice in place. We also, with working together with our partners, were able to identify potentially what gaps were there, and also to understand the challenges that they were facing. So we began to understand that you know, asking for policies, asking for procedures was not necessarily transferring to real change. You know, we might have a policy document that sits on the shelf, but, you know, yeah, how are we beginning to do that? So, yeah, and also listening to partner organizations, we were reflecting on the fact that, you know, everybody talking about safeguarding, having different requirements from different partnership organizations, maybe different donors, was creating a lot of noise, and that noise was bringing a lot of confusion about. So our journey so far has been that we have a partner grant agreement. We then took the workshops with our partner organizations to talk about, you know, safeguarding, to maybe share a little bit more around moving beyond policies and procedures to actual implementation. But we recognize that, yeah, noise, confusion, that, you know, also recognizing that partners were fully committed to safeguarding, but also then after training, finding the time to move to practice. So what we began to do was obviously create some tools and share some tools. But again, how helpful was that? But when we began to conduct risk assessments and really sit down and talk with our partner organizations, we began to understand that we needed to do a little bit more than that. So in 2019, with support from some Irish Aid funding, we piloted a small grants to partners to develop their safeguarding systems. So it included policies, communications, IEC materials, and I suppose the pilot in 2019 was pivotal in identifying requirements for change. So currently, particularly for organizations with more than one donor or more than one partner organization, the focus has been on meeting donor requirements for policies. We saw organizations who had a safeguarding policy, a child safeguarding policy, a PSEA policy, all articulating differently, but pointing to the same practices. We found that many locations were short of people with relevant safeguarding consultancy experiences. While there was a breadth of safeguarding consultants in the global north, in many of the countries where we worked, there were not necessarily safeguarding specialists locally. So therefore, even with you know, maybe providing grants to partners to continue on their safeguarding journey, And while materials and tools were really helpful, there wasn't necessarily a real space to turn to for next steps. So in thinking about those challenges and considering these within the context of a step change, particularly towards localization, something that Trócaire is fully committed to, in recognizing that local organizations and specialists from local areas are best placed to respond, we began to question, is this really, should this be the same for safeguarding? And, you know, if we are really committed to localization, surely that step change should be supported by looking at how can we do safeguarding differently? How can we recognize the best practice that's already there? And how can we change the approach that's happening? So with that in mind, we embarked on a really, what we thought was a really exciting project in 2020 and 2021. And again, with some support of Irish Aid funding, we embarked on a pilot in doing just that. So we linked with some in-country consultants. Some had previous experience on safeguarding, and some worked in areas that were some way connected. People had skill sets in working with communities, with senior management, etc. And we all began to walk the journey together. So working with local consultant with remote support and linking with me, and as they began to walk the safeguarding journey with a local partner organization. So really trying to start to see how we could instigate real change, how we could listen to what our partners were telling us, how we could recognize good practice, how we could understand more particularly how safeguarding is best implemented in different contexts. So we also recognize that there are a wealth of resources available. Lots are available free online now. And so that wasn't our approach to reinvent the wheel, but actually to do an accompaniment approach as partner organizations took on their safeguarding journey. So like in doing this, I suppose the question then has to be asked is, you know, does this approach really make any difference? What does it tell us going forward? What are the positive outcomes and what are the lessons that we can learn? So I think of very much, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of, you know, throwing a pebble in a pond and we see the ripple effects. But I see this very much as us throwing a pebble in a pond, and hopefully we will see some ripple effects starting in relation to kind of this type of approach. So the speakers joining us today are the ones that are best placed to answer the question as, does this really work? So I am going to let them speak really about the particular project that we took on, the next steps that we engaged with, sort of where the initial approaches of obviously looking at our agreements, looking at our initial training, but then moving on to the accompaniment approach, what that has really meant. And so, yeah, I think the speakers here today are best placed to share that with you, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from them. So thank you, everybody. And sorry for the technical glitch, but I hope just me sharing it with you verbally that you could get a sense of what the approach has been. But we will share the slides, hopefully through Dóchas as well. Great.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Good examples there of how, I guess, the kind of larger organization working through local partners took that ground up approach rather than imposing policies and practice on partners, really trying to fit it into the local context. I also realized I didn't introduce who I was when I started. So I'm Matthew Banks, and I am the head of programs at an NGO called Children in Crossfire, and we work in early childhood development in Tanzania and Ethiopia. Within my remit is safeguarding. So just get that out of the way. And now our next speaker is Emma Newbury. Emma's a research specialist with expertise in women's rights. The bios are going to be posted in the chat with a bit more detail, but I will hand over to you, Emma, for the next a presentation of a learning paper that you've done. So over to you.
Thanks very much. Yep, so I'm going to share my screen. I hope for the best on that one as well, just to talk you through the learning review. So as Margaret introduced, Trócaire conducted this series of pilots on this approach of accompaniment around safeguarding. And they contracted me to conduct a learning review of that, which involved talking to the different consultants, the partner organisations and the Trócaire office staff who were involved in this process. The pilots were undertaken in Ethiopia, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Zimbabwe, and were done with a number of different local partner organisations. Sorry, I can't make the screen go away. I'm just going to do this up here and hopefully that will work. Okay, there we go. So as I'm sure you're all familiar with, it's important to really think about the sectoral context, which Margaret has already alluded to, in where we find ourselves in working with partnership organisations on safeguarding, and where the sector in general is on safeguarding. And so it really started around due diligence processes. Many UN entities, INGOs and other donor agencies have implemented due diligence processes. And that really has involved a lot of capacity assessments around safeguarding, with very little standardization of that process. What the literature shows is that the slight problem or the challenges around that is that it's often led to safeguarding being seen as a tick box exercise, where organizations have to meet a certain criteria to receive funding. Which can be challenging because it's led to the result of people focusing on quick solutions, on limited voice of local actors. So as people need to meet standards to receive funding, there's often been a focus on how this can be done. And so that has involved, for example, numerous tools being developed or people adopting policies as standard templates rather than them necessarily being adopted to the local context. And it's also, according to the research and the literature that's out there, it's also created limited voice for local actors, where local organizations feel obligated to agree to recommendations around safeguarding and agree to very short time spans, and them having templates or policies that don't necessarily represent their context or their organization. And then this has been amplified with a lack of funding for capacity strengthening around safeguarding, with often the approach being that this should be something that's fulfilled by the organization themselves, rather than necessarily there being institutional funding for strengthening capacity around safeguarding. In the last few years, there has been a push for change within the sector. For example, Bond in the UK have been very vocal around this, and they produced a paper in 2019 arguing for a change in the approach to safeguarding, especially with partner organisations. And the Funder Safeguarding Collaborative undertook research in 2021. And among their recommendations was the need for funding for capacity strengthening on safeguarding, and it needs to be responsive to the needs of the organisation and situated within the context. So there's definitely movement within the sector to change the current feeling that it can be seen as a tick box exercise, which isn't necessarily leading to real strengthened systems around safeguarding and protection, which is what we want to see, obviously, is those that need protecting are protected by the systems that are in place. And so as Margaret mentioned, Trócaire undertook a pilot to see if approach through a local accompaniment with a local consultant and support from Margaret could help partners move forward in their safeguarding journeys. And I'm just going to go briefly through the findings from that review. And so accompaniment was considered to be much more effective than training. That's not to say that training wasn't important. The partners that I spoke with mentioned the importance of training as giving them underlying knowledge, often starting them out in understanding more around safeguarding, but the on-the-job support and accompaniment was really beneficial in them being able to move forward with safeguarding within their organizations, because it was so tailored to their context and having someone there to be able to support them. So that was considered to be incredibly important. The use of local consultants was seen to support a tailored response. Whether this was them knowing the context, being able to provide examples from their previous work, being able to translate the concepts of safeguarding. In some of the countries where this pilot was conducted, specifically in Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua, in the Central American countries, the concept of safeguarding hasn't taken hold in quite the same way, and the words of safeguarding needed to be translated into the local context to help people see it not as something that was donor imposed, but something that could actually lead to them improving the work that they do and having a stronger organization. And the local consultants were seen to be able to do that by bringing in the concepts that they knew from their context into the work and the accompaniment that they were doing with the partners. And it also was important in terms of tailored response, because the partner organizations that Trócaire work with, and I'm sure that many of you work with, are all very different, whether they are church organizations, membership organizations, they all have very different structures. And so having this tailored response was very important, because it wasn't just about taking a template and applying it, but being able to respond to their needs as a different organization. For example, one of the organizations in Guatemala, which is a membership organization, they had struggled in the past with applying safeguarding templates that they had received because it didn't respond to the way that they work as a membership organization and the structures that they have in place, because it was more focused on traditional NGO structures. And so having the local consultant, they were able to translate the ideas of safeguarding and put them into their organizational context. And it was also found that safeguarding needs to be supported across the organization, and this accompaniment approach was able to do that. So the consultants were able to work with the board of the organizations, and I think that the partners will talk more about this in their sessions, in their presentations, but it was really important that there was a agreement across the organization about the importance of safeguarding and an understanding of what safeguarding looked like in the organization. So this meant engaging with the board and engaging with the staff at a different level. So really rolling it out across the organization and having it been seen as something that was important to the organization, not something that was being imposed on the organization. So it was really important that it was supported at those different levels. And it also meant that there was, people could see it as being important as well across the organization. So it wasn't something that was just seen as something they had to do with communities, but something that could actually be beneficial to the organization and could provide the staff within the organization as well with protection, and that they had rights that were part of safeguarding. So that was seen to be really important. And again, the local consultants with the lived experience and of the context and the culture can help break down potential barriers. Again, translating different concepts into the work and being able to bring their examples into the work. So for example, when they had encountered issues of safeguarding within the past, or that they could point out potential areas, potential challenges, potential areas where safeguarding would be important. They could bring these in within the cultural context. That was seen to be really important with the partner organizations. So they could actually see the examples relevant to their context. That was seen to be really important as well. And then how it was really important to learn from what's already there and how to embed safeguarding systems within the existing systems that exist. So for example, in Ethiopia, one of the partner organizations already had policies around child safeguarding, different policies around staff protocols, but not a particular code of conduct. But so the local consultant was able to identify the different policies and systems that were in place, highlight potential gaps and bring them together, working in accompaniment with the partner organization to make it into a full safeguarding system. So rather than just coming in and saying this is what has to be done, really as the first step, understanding what's in place, what's there, and being able to bring that all together in one, which again responds to what Margaret was talking to at the beginning of, how different organizations, donor organizations, partner organizations have been working with partners and doing trainings and providing support, but can lead to there being different policies in place, but not necessarily an overall system. And so this is really making sure that the experience that the partners have is built on and brought together into this overall safeguarding system. So learning from what's already there and what's in place and what the partners have, and then moving forward on that safeguarding journey was seen to be really important to the partners, and then being able to advance in safeguarding. And then also that safeguarding is a journey, and it does require ongoing implementation and resources for that journey to continue. And so the local consultants worked with the partner organizations to develop action plans towards the end of the consultancy. And those action plans then needed to be implemented by the partner organizations. When I interviewed them, which was either a year or a few months after the safeguarding support had ended with the consultant, they were at different stages with that action plan, but they were all talking about struggles in terms of having resources to be able to fully implement that plan. They were being very resourceful. Some of them had gone to their other partner organizations or other donors and asked for funding to be able to implement those plans. Some of them had looked at being able to integrate them into existing activities. So, for example, one organization in Sierra Leone was talking about safeguarding at the start of new activities that they were doing and trying to integrating it into existing programs that they had and funding they had for activities, but they were struggling to find existing and so find resources to be able to fully implement those plans. For example, to be able to do staff training on a regular basis, that requires resources to be able to do the work in raising awareness in communities around safeguarding, which is obviously incredibly important in the journey. That requires ongoing resources and ongoing accompaniment as well. So that's a really important lesson, is that this, there isn't a silver bullet with it. There's not one way. This really is a journey that requires ongoing support, resources and accompaniment for people to be able to carry on moving forward in that journey. Of course, it requires less resources as the systems are up and running, but there is a need for that ongoing support and ongoing resources. In terms of recommendations from the learning review, there were a number that we've learned that safeguarding cannot be rushed. It requires a consultative model that responds to this. So one that really responds to the organizational context, and the type of programs and work that the organization is engaging in. It needs to be something that is taken forward by the whole organization, and that requires time. that funding for safeguarding should be part of all institutional funding agreements, so there actually are resources in place dedicated for safeguarding capacity strengthening. At the moment, there's often capacity strengthening, but there's not a line dedicated for actually safeguarding capacity strengthening, which is really important. So further advocacy needs to be done on that as well. And then advocacy with donors is needed to ensure that partner agencies are given the time and a voice in the development of their systems. And so if there is due diligence and there are capacity assessments, that there is time and voice for partners to be able to really develop their own systems, and then they're not rushed or taken to have existing templates just so that they can tick the due diligence compliance. So there's a need for the sector to do advocacy to make sure that that's the way that safeguarding is considered within the due diligence requirements. And coordination and planning is needed with other agencies to ensure that duplication of support does not occur. As Margaret mentioned at the beginning, agencies out there are engaging on safeguarding in different ways. The partners that I spoke to had received a number of different trainings from different partner organizations that they work with, but there's a need for it to be taken in a holistic way so that the organizations are working on their safeguarding journeys so that they can receive support from different organizations at different stages, and it's connected. So there's more coordination and planning across the sector rather than people receiving this ad hoc support from their different partner organizations or donors. So there's a need for kind of the sector to make some changes, and also for this type of approach to be replicated in the future to allow the voice for partner organizations to come through. So that's my quick summary of the learning review, which is available online, and I'm sure is being posted in the group, so you can see about all the experiences of all the different partner organizations. But I know that now we're going to hear from the partners in Zimbabwe who can talk much better about their experiences than I can. So I will leave it there. Thank you, Matthew.
Brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Plenty to ponder there for those head office people who are trying to bring safeguarding to the partners, and for the partners, the local partners there to pursue with those head office organizations and contacts. The thing that really came through there for me was locally led and local capacity. So brilliant. Thank you for that. And you see the more detailed paper of that presentation. The link to that was just put in the chat there by Margaret. So if you want to have a deeper look at that, that is available there. So we're at 5 or 10 minutes behind, but that's fine. We've got plenty of time. We're now going to have a little poll, I think, Morgane, with some interesting facts about Zimbabwe before we hear directly from the Trócaire partners there on the ground. So over to you, Morgane.
Hi everyone. There's 3 questions there in the poll. We have: Zimbabwe has the most official languages in the world. How many do you think there are? How many UNESCO World Heritage Sites are there in Zimbabwe? And it's landlocked. Which one of these countries borders Zimbabwe? We'll put the correct answers in the chat too, but just to give a sense of what you think. I know I myself didn't realize there were that many official languages. So the answer is 16 official languages in Zimbabwe. The official languages in there. There are 5 World Heritage Sites. Here we go. And finally, the countries that border Zimbabwe. Thanks everyone for giving it a shot. Like we can see there, most people were correct for number 1, correct for number 2, and correct for number 3. So fantastic, great participation, everyone. And for people like me who didn't know about the languages, I think we've learned a lot today already. Thanks very much.
Brilliant, thank you. I wonder how many of those languages you speak, Yvonne. You're next up. If you could choose English, you're probably going to be okay here. Yes, so thanks for the for that little respite. And now Yvonne Muto, who is the Global Women's Empowerment Advisor at Trócaire, and has also been a program manager in the Zimbabwe country office there with responsibility for safeguarding. So somebody who really sits in that that position between the head office and the field offices and the local partners. So over to you, Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Maybe while Morgan is putting up my presentation, I perfectly speak 2 languages. The rest, they are mutually intelligible, so I can communicate. So thank you. So I'm going to present on our approach to safeguarding as Trócaire Zimbabwe. Would you move to the next slide, Morgan? Thank you. That's a picture of the jacarandas. I thought Morgan was going to ask us about the flowers that are in Zimbabwe at this time of the year. Is the jacaranda tree. And we heard about the fun facts about Zimbabwe. But for us to get a better appreciation of how we've been trying to do safeguarding in what context, I'll give a presentation of the context in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, as many of you might know, is characterized by intersecting social, political, and economic crises, which are underpinned by poor governance, all of which impact on women and men's livelihoods, their ability to bounce back from shocks, and to live free from poverty. This situation is exacerbated by the fact that Zimbabwe is impacted by slow and rapid onset natural and man-made disasters, ranging from drought, floods, and political violence. Politically, Zimbabwe is governed by a ruling party that is known for its partisan control of state institutions and resources, undermining transparency and accountability, and resulting in pervasive corruption and lack of social accountability. Socially, Zimbabwe is characterized by persistent gender inequalities, underpinned by cultural, socioeconomic, and political factors, patriarchal traditions, and harmful cultural and religious beliefs, and practices that continue to fuel gender-based violence. And Zimbabwe's economic challenges, which have been exacerbated by the impacts of COVID-19, have negatively impacted on women. Women are severely underrepresented in political decision-making and find very few opportunities to express their voice in the political arena and in general public life. And economically, Zimbabwe's prevailing economic conditions are usually influenced by the political situation, with high levels of corruption, patronage, policy inconsistency, and lack of investor confidence. The economic situation remains dire, with prices of basic commodities beyond the reach of many citizens and continued inflation challenges, which undermine livelihoods, with an almost 80% formal unemployment rate and rising poverty levels. And in terms of the humanitarian context, climate change continues to affect Zimbabwe, with the most poor communities experiencing an increase in the frequency and magnitude of El Nino-induced droughts in the past 10 years, and the sudden onset of cyclones. Over 85% of the rural population in Zimbabwe rely on rain-fed agriculture, and parts of the southern part of the country where we work, they are perennially food insecure. And this situation continues to be compounded by the rapidly worsening economic situation and the impacts of COVID-19. Could you move to the next slide? Thank you. So it is against this background that Trócaire Zimbabwe implements projects across these four goal areas. One being defending human rights and promoting access to justice. The second area being climate and environmental justice. The third one being the protection of women and girls and their voice and leadership. And the fourth area being saving lives and protecting human dignity. And we are implementing all these programs with the overall goal of having empowered women and men in targeted communities in Zimbabwe, holding the state to account and benefiting from a responsive state that respects and protects social, economic, political, and civil rights, and promotes inclusive and sustainable development, and are also adequately prepared to reduce the impacts of climate change induced emergencies and recover from them. Would you move to the next slide? So in doing all this work, Trócaire Zimbabwe works in partnership. Trócaire is a partnership-based organization. We deliver our program across the 4 goal areas through a partnership approach, where 21 organizations make our partnership portfolio. Our partners are a mix of different kinds of organizations, that is national partners who have countrywide reach and take on national level work and engagements, such as national level advocacy. We have the church partners, we have women-centered organizations, and we also have the local organizations who are at the grassroots and are also community-based organizations that are set up and operate from the heart of the communities where we work. Our strategic plan commits to the evolution of our partnership approach by furthering the localization of development. We recognize the increasing level of capacity of civil society in Zimbabwe and the consequent need of our role as partnership agency to adapt appropriately to their changing needs. As such, managing such a big partnership of diverse organizations against the backdrop of our localization commitments, it comes with a host of challenges, especially around ensuring that we are adequately enhancing our partners' capacity on safeguarding. It also presents challenges around ensuring that standard procedures are followed and internationally acceptable safeguarding mechanisms are in place across the portfolio of partners. We'll just move to the next slide. So as such, to ensure that as Trócaire Zimbabwe, we provide the most meaningful support to our partners in relation to safeguarding, we have a number of tools that are in place. To begin with, when we are seeking new partnerships, we have 18 minimum requirements, which is a checklist that we use when we're preparing to begin a partnership with a new organization. Within the 18 minimum requirements checklist, minimum requirement number 16 focuses on safeguarding. The minimum requirement checks whether the partner organization has a policy or a statement of commitment regarding safeguarding. This allows us to have a general appreciation of where the partner is in terms of safeguarding. We also have our partner capacity assessment tool, which we use when we are in partnership. It is designed to assess the capacity of our partners across a number of competence areas, ranging from governance to program management and to financial management. And within this partner capacity assessment tool, we have a number of checklists which look into the partner organization's safeguarding positions. For instance, the leadership and accountability checklist will check if the organization welcomes and responds to feedback and complaints. Within the management and human rights and HR checklist, the tool seeks whether the organization has clear safeguarding and recruitment policies which outline procedures for safe recruitment. So these tools are combined together. They have been key and they remain key to our approach to ensuring that our partners are safeguarding compliant. Would you move to the next slide? And as we are safeguarding in the project, in different projects we're conducting, so in addition to the two partnership-based processes and the tools that we have a number of process-based checks and balances that are kept ongoing throughout the lifespan of the project or the partnership. The initial assessment is a tool that allows us, as we begin a new partnership, to assess related existing risks of safeguarding issues. From this analysis, a partner safeguarding action plan is developed against which a partner's progress is monitored. The next tool. So based on the initial assessment and the safeguarding risks findings, we have tailored standard safeguarding trainings and refresher trainings that we roll out to our partner staff. We also have specific trainings for the safeguarding focal persons within our partner organizations. And the next tool is the partner spot review. This tool enables Trócaire Zimbabwe staff member to access partner safeguarding compliance as part of any other monitoring or project visits. We also have our partner safeguarding monitoring visits That's the next tool. These are periodic monitoring visits where a partner's progress against issues identified in the partner capacity assessment is reviewed. And then in addition to this tool, our partners through self-audits are encouraged on an annual basis to reflect on their position on safeguarding against set standards, which include safeguarding policies and implementation, creating and maintaining safe environments around recruitment, around training, creating safe environments around communication with third parties. Also, on standards around safe programming and creating an environment which is open to receiving concerns as well as responding to concerns. And throughout our journey with our partners, we ensure that they are using self-recruitment checklists. Will you move on to the next slide? So through the various safeguarding tools that we have and we utilize in our partnership, we already had earmarked partners that we placed as a priority in receiving technical support in the area of safeguarding. And we'll hear from one of the partners today. This is how we then got to identify one of our partners who were able to take part in this localization of our safeguarding approach. We had 3 partners, but today we'll hear from one of the identified partners. And then how did we identify a local consultant? So to ensure that the support was designed specifically for our partners, we selected a local consultant, as Emma had alluded to. A consultant who understands the context of the programming areas in Zimbabwe and whose experience we are also going to hear from shortly. And without preempting the coming speakers' presentations, working in partnership with the local consultant is key in the development of locally appropriate solutions to safeguarding challenges which are being faced by our partners, and has created an opportunity for sustainability towards the strengthening of our safeguarding systems. So I will end there and we can hear from the rest of the partners. Thank you so much, Matthew. Over to you.
Brilliant. And thank you, Yvonne. Interesting. Again, localization, locally led, all comes through there very strongly. I will move straight on to the next presentation, which is actually now one of the partners there that was involved in that process, an organization called Connect, Zimbabwe Institute of Systemic Therapy. Dennis is the director of the organization and has a background in social work and one of the longest members of that organization. So I will hand over to you, Dennis. Are you connected okay? Hello, Dennis. You're on mute. There we go. Oh,
yes.
Okay, brilliant. Over to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you. I will talk briefly about the Connect and the work we do. And then my colleagues, Annette and Winnet, will continue with the presentation, talking about our experiences in safeguarding. So straight to Connect, where I'm just going to give a background. The Connect is a membership organization which was founded in 1983. And this is a local non-governmental organization. And we believe that people should be connected to each other in the fight against the social ills, hence the name Connect. Otherwise, we would have popularized our other name, which is Zimbabwe Institute of Systemic Therapy. But because we emphasize the importance of working together, we are known more about by the name Connect. We started off as a counseling organization and then later extended our activities to include the training of counselors and also doing research and consultancy services. In all this work, we are informed by the systemic approach. And our vision as Connect is peace and harmony in individuals, families, communities, and society at large. We also have the 4 specific objectives which guide us in our work. The first one is to promote counseling for low-income families from Zimbabwe and neighboring countries, so as to overcome a wide variety of social problems. And then the second one is to train a broad range of health, social services, and community workers in family counseling and systemic management techniques. And the third one being to offer consultant services to communities and organizations in the application of general systems theory in order to solve social problems and promoting positive change. And then the fourth one is to develop through research and evaluation indigenous therapeutic management and training techniques and materials. Then in doing this work, we have the values which speak to us, which guide us. We have the 2, 4, 6, 7 values. The first one being confidentiality, which is very important in line with the work we do. And then we also talk about wellness, because we are more into mental health. So wellness of our clients and our own wellness as staff members. And then integrity, transparency and accountability, equality and respect, and then inclusiveness and gender sensitivity in whatever we do. Then we, from the values, I'll briefly talk about how we implement through the departments we have. We have the counseling department. This department is the one which takes care of all the counseling work we do. And on average, we see about 150 families per year at our center. And then we also interact with international and local universities who also benefit from the clinic as they seek practical exposure in counseling. And some of the universities also accredit the work we do. The counselors are licensed by our Allied Health Practitioners Council of Zimbabwe. And then the training department, we pride in ourselves in being the leading Zimbabwean training organization in counseling. And in a year, we graduate about 150 professional counselors. We also have the community-based projects department, and over the years, connect to counseling to the communities as a response to the HIV and AIDS pandemic and other challenges which we continue to experience in our country. And these include gender-based violence, these include trauma due to the issues which have already been alluded to by the previous speaker. And then currently, we have been running projects in the rural areas in Mtasa district and Bikita district. This is Manicaland province and Masvingo province. These are the projects which were supported by Trócaire, and we were targeting women empowerment, and the issues we tried to address were to do with the gender-based violence and also child marriages. These are the issues which we are experiencing in the communities. And in our research, we try and promote action research in all the work we do. And this is the section which is also responsible for our publications. Generally, the issues people present for counseling include sexual abuse, trauma, bereavement, stress, depression, gender-based violence. These are the major issues people present for counseling at our counseling clinic. In brief, this is what we do as the Connect. And in doing this work, we then see the importance of safeguarding, as we don't want to do harm to clients, and we also need to protect our staff from being harmed. So thank you. I've done the introduction. The next speaker will go straight into talking about the work with the safeguarding experiences we have had as Connect. Thank you, Matthew.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dennis. And great to hear about your work at really at the front line there of people dealing with the context that was described earlier. So now we're going to hear from Bekezela Mapanda, who was a consultant, a Zimbabwe consultant, who's been working with Trócaire on this program and working with their partners. So I will hand over to you, Beke. I think
Hello.
I will. Ah, yes, there you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Thank you very much, Matthew. For just to introduce myself, my name is Bekezela Mapanda. I am based in Zimbabwe, and formerly I used to work with Trócaire in various roles, as you shall see during my presentation. So I'll take you through the work that I did with Connect on this safeguarding initiative. Let me try and share my presentation, and please confirm if you could see it. Okay.
Yes, that's coming through now.
Okay, so thank you very much. So on my side, I think I had been given just 3 questions to talk through, which were what is my role, or what enabled me to be able to do this, and then the actual work that I did with the partners, specifically Connect, as well as to look at some of the lessons, share some of the lessons learned about the approach, also comparing with the work that I used to do in my previous roles around safeguarding, and highlighting some of the key interesting things that emerged when I started doing safeguarding as a consultant. So that's me, and so that at least people are aware who they're talking to. So just basically, I will start by a brief background from where I started. My exposure to the concept of safeguarding came in stages. I think firstly when I was a program officer, and as well as in program advisor roles, managing the HIV and women empowerment portfolios, responsible for both the technical aspects and then the partner capacity building or strengthening mandate within Trócaire. So this was spanning a period of about 5 years. And then also in my role now is the safeguarding focal point as part of the program management role that I used to play for the organization. And I think one of the key things that we would do as an organization really was to focus on the partner capacity building or strengthening mandate, focusing on safeguarding program participants. And well, in the beginning, initially, there wasn't much that we did. We had the policies, and then the Oxfam scandal came to the fore, and then all of a sudden safeguarding was there, and it was something that we wanted to do. And at that time, then Trócaire really began to focus on that strengthening the institutional capacity, not just for Trócaire, but also for our IP. So we saw a lot of things happening there, such as the recruitment of Margaret, who is also on this call, some policy framework reviews and training of staff. So this is where then some of us then began to really hear or understand about what safeguarding is and what we need to do. And then we received this training to also safeguard, so to cascade to our implementing partners. So in the various roles you had as a program officer, also as a program manager, you had different roles that you would play within this framework. So if you're an officer, you are responsible for working with your partners to ensure that you're doing the safeguarding assessments, your policy reviews, your training and support and the mentoring on those safeguarding journeys, and also ensuring that you submit your report to the program manager, who's overall responsible for reporting on that. And then with time, 2019 to 2020, I was working as the program manager. And in this case now, the mandate was much broader than the portfolios that I used to focus on as an officer, and also the role had slightly changed. And now we had mostly the issue was around ensuring that the safeguarding is embedded across all the partners, and we're also doing all our reporting. And then from when I moved from Trócaire, then I went to, I'm currently working as a GBV lead for SAFE, a program focusing on GBV prevention in Zimbabwe. And there again, I also then, just because of my background, I got to be appointed to act as the in-country safeguarding focal point for that. So in all of this, there were three things that I would say then helped me to be able to then do this initiative and try and work with partners. So initially when I started, I got to understand the concept, and my capacity was also being built around that. So as an officer, I would only understand maybe the concept and also the organizational strengthening process. But when I moved into management role, then I began to see the importance around monitoring, safeguarding commitments, and also reporting. And then when I moved into this new role, there were other more elements that then I began to get to understand around safeguarding. It's not just about the policy, but there are other issues that we had to look at, such as intersectionality and safeguarding, looking at the gender continuum and issues around disability. So basically, in the last 10 years, this is how, as a safeguarding consultant, I actually then grew in this work. So then in sorry, in 2021, can everybody see my slides?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 2021, so that was in November, December. I was then contracted by Trócaire to work with three partners from different programs. So these three were Caritas, Zimbabwe, Archdiocese of Bulawayo, then the Union for Development of Apostolic and Zionist Churches in Zimbabwe, in Africa, Judah Caesar, as well as in Connect that you have already heard from. So in this role, I had to do 5 things, which was to review their safeguarding arrangements and identify priority areas for capacity strengthening, develop action plans to put in place robust and sound safeguarding and associated policy procedures, facilitate honest discussions and generate conversations that will support senior management leadership in the 3 organizations to take steps towards making important positive cultural changes in their organization, raise awareness on safeguarding principles, concepts, and institutional frameworks, and then also develop clear plans and guidelines of how they will cascade safeguarding to communities. Already, as you can see, the terms of reference were robust, and there was a lot of work that I needed to actually then embark on with the different partners. So in doing this work, I got a lot of support from Trócaire. So it was a sort of an iterative process. And so what really then helped me or enabled me to do this work and achieve some of the results that we have achieved to date was the fact that Trócaire had a clear terms of reference on the job at hand. The team were clear, this is what we need, this is what you need to do. And we also had inception meetings to discuss the TORs, expectations, and outline the roles and responsibilities of the different players. Since this was a long-term process really that we needed to embark on. We also had interim meetings to discuss progress as well as challenges, and looking at adaptation that needed to be made. So we had our initial plan, which was aligned in our terms of reference. And then when I began to do the work, I realized that, okay, maybe we needed to make changes. So these meetings were good in that we're then able to come and sit as a team and look at our progress and make the necessary changes. Additionally, I had all the Trócaire materials, the assessment templates, the safeguarding policy template, and all the materials that we needed. So I already had the support in terms of what kind of assessment should we look at. We could start from that template and then expand it further to make it more contextual, and also the policy template to use if and when, as and when needed. And lastly, we had a closeout meeting where I was able then to hand over the work back to Trócaire, and for them to further then work with the identified partners on the different elements that we had identified in the 2 months that I was contracted. So when I got the TOR, so I thought how to best go about this work. So I do admit this was a very ambitious framework. We thought, okay, 2 months, this should be done. Of course, there are other challenges which I will mention at the end of the presentations that then made us adapt some of this support framework that we had put in place. So firstly, we'll raise awareness, and looking at the partners that I had, I then thought maybe let me work on engaging senior management and leadership, because we found that for any changes to be made in any organization, it's critical that senior management and leadership be involved. And also then use the participatory safeguarding assessment using the Trócaire template as part of also raising awareness around some of the elements that needed to be in place. Then we thought we could do a bit of building skills and knowledge. And for us to do that, we were then saying, okay, I would think maybe we can do training and also maybe looking at knowledge development tools, either development of those tools or signposting to those tools. And lastly, supporting the effective implementation. So this is providing technical assistance, which was in the form of either sort of, I was like a help desk where then the partners within this period would be able to then ask me questions or ask for assistance on any identified elements that we had put in our work plan. And so while the 3 pillars were implemented separately, it has to be important that people understand that these are mutually reinforcing, and also then enable a standardized implementation of any program around capacity building. So this was the framework that underpinned the work that I was doing in terms of theoretically as well as practically. So working with Connect, so what were the processes that were undertaken? So we first started, of course, with the introduction. Of course, since I was at Trócaire before, and actually Connect was one of the partners under my one or two of my portfolios, it was a reintroduction. Then there were simultaneous processes that then I undertook at that point, which was a desk review of all the policies, frameworks, and the processes that they had on safeguarding, bearing in mind that this was a partner that had also benefited from a couple of years in terms of capacity strengthening on safeguarding as per the Trócaire mandate. Then we also did a participatory safeguarding assessment using the Trócaire partner assessment form, and we had discussions around what they had in place, what they had improved. And when we're having these discussions and these assessments, it was really also it was also a sort of an assessment of how far the organization had come in terms of safeguarding. So following that assessment and also the review of the policies, the framework, and the processes, we were able then to come up with a draft report with the key findings and proposed recommendations. And following that, we then had a meeting with the Connect senior management on these gaps in the recommendations, which led to the development of an action plan, or I would say a draft action plan, which identified, so we then said we will start with short-term issues that we needed to address, and then also have the medium to long-term issues that will then be that the organization will undertake post my support phase. So as we were working together in the short term, there were just 3 activities that we then did to try and make sure that we are kickstarting the process. And so this was ensuring that the focal point, and I think 4 others in the team were trained or have a refresher training on safeguarding and what is required, and so that they will be able to then go back to their systems and go back to what they've been doing and explore with fellow team members, particularly new ones, to also then just go back to the whole concept around safeguarding within Connect and see what can be improved, and also engage, ensure that everybody who is in the organization, everyone is in the organization is able to understand what is safeguarding to Connect. And then we're also engaging on signposting to resources, existing resources, because we had limited time. So as part of my role, I also was looking for resources to help them do some of the things that they needed to do at the time. And lastly, we had discussions with senior management using the bond leadership tool as part of also then just raising awareness and also trying to create ownership and buy-in of the process. At the end of it all, I handed over the action plan to Connect, and following the handover, I think 6 months later, then Connect also did a training for board members. So this was something that was also in the action plan, and the reason why we needed this was because we had identified some key policy issues that needed to be addressed within the existing policies, and we needed also the board to understand why we were doing this and be able to fast track some of the changes. So in terms of the process, this is how I worked with Connect to do this. But underpinning all of this was also all the information and the learning that I had had with working with Connect over a period of time, and also when we were having discussions, I was able then to tap into that knowledge to then contextualize some of the discussions about how identify some of the areas which still needed more work. In line with what Connect does, particularly if we're looking at psychosocial support, there are so many elements that really need to be in place and we need our partners to be aware of if we are not to do any harm. So within this working with Connect and obviously the other 2 partners, what were the key lessons that I derived from the whole process? One of the things is that flexibility is key to achieve sustainable safeguarding outcomes. When I was a program officer, it was more, we could almost, it was like you have got time pressures to achieve program outcomes, and also try in the same breath ensure that you are achieving some of these institutional organizational outcomes such as safeguarding, and the flexibility within that time frame was kind of limited. But when we're now doing this process, it was more focused, and we're able to change as and when we had some emerging issues. So then the accompaniment process allowed us to be very responsive to the emerging issues and context that were pertaining to Connect. And then we had a tailored capacity strengthening in line with the organization context and position on the safeguarding journey. And this is a lesson that I think should be considered as we move forward. All organizations are in a different space in terms of safeguarding, and it is always important to then use that learning to move us to the next stage. Connect had already been doing safeguarding, and whilst the training was an important issue, at that point when we started, we then looked and said, do we need to start with training, or we need to then go back and look at what we have, what have we learned during this time, and then we tailor how we are doing things going forward. The process also then eliminated the inherent power dynamics between funder and implementing partner. It was easier to have open discussions on various topics. So based on my background, and then coming in as a consultant, you could see the difference. And because I had been away from maybe Trócaire and partners, so it was easier then for us to really talk about what needed to be improved and why, without people feeling that maybe the grant may be taken away. At that point, then we were really on an even, on a balanced platform. And also what I gathered is that if we have an institutional framework that is very strong on safeguarding, it actually lays a foundation for establishment of community safeguarding systems. I think one of the things that has been I think we have struggled with in the development sector is that we have these good policies in the offices, but how do we then translate those policies to the communities where we work, and we make them simple and make them very functional. And I think one of the things that I saw from my work with Connect is that they really have tried to also contextualize their safeguarding in the communities that they work. They have done the training for all their community cadres and so on and so forth. So, but this was also an area which I thought we needed further strengthening with time and resources invested. And also then one of the things that we had a discussion on was around the monitoring of safeguarding. Once the policy is in place, the organization then didn't have any monitoring framework or that would enable them to see whether they are actually progressing on their journey. So, sorry. Hello? Hello?
But just carry on, Becca. We're very tight on time now. It'd be great to draw to a close.
I'm almost done.
Thank you.
So yes, and then the last thing was around then the three other things were around allocating sufficient time for embedding safeguarding in institution is also important, and also resourcing. And lastly, the external support for safeguarding at intervals is good practice that should be explored. I think, so for us, the challenges were around the timing and duration of the assignment. So we had processes that required more time, but we all had limited time. So things like planning for training workshops, or putting in place a policy and allowing for reflection. We didn't have time for that. So when we did the work as well, I think we still had challenges with COVID-19. So at some point, staff from UDASIS contracted COVID-19, so we could not start the assignment on time, and also it was the holidays. And then also financial resources. So there were recommendations that needed to be implemented, but maybe the IPs didn't have the financial resources to then actually do the work. So it was it then leads to the next challenge, that maybe when we do some work like this, we need to have our coordination and availability of resources nexus figured out before we start the work. So between Trócaire implementing partners and the consultants, so that we achieve the elements in any work plan that you develop when we are working with the IPs. Thank you. Over to you, Matthew.
Yes, thank you, Becca. Thank you very much there. I will just move straight on because we're now right at the front line of this with the Annette Matanda and Winnet Meniadza, who are with Connect Zimbabwe and really represent people at the front line of trying to implement safeguarding in their locally led organizations. So Annette, I can see you there ready, so I will hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Thank you, everyone. I'm very excited to be part of this webinar. I'm going to take you quickly, because of time, through what we did. I'm going to take you through our past experiences, the challenges that we were facing, and also what was different about this initiative. And then lastly, I'll go through the main impacts that is on our programming, policy reviews, safe recruitment, and code of conduct. Okay. Okay, thank you, Morgan. So as for our experiences, safeguarding was and is still one of the most important factors to consider in our work. Why? Because we are guided by counseling ethical principles of doing no harm to clients, and also some of our values include promotion of inclusiveness and protection of clients. Therefore, capacity building for the organization in safeguarding issues improved, and we managed to strengthen our practices. Still on our experiences, we already, like I said, we're doing something on safeguarding before the coming in of Trócaire. For example, we had several policies linked to safeguarding, like our clients and program participant protection policy, which was developed so that we create a conducive environment for all our groups, that is our program participants, beneficiaries, our clients who come for counseling, our students who come for training, and our volunteers. Also, we had our code of conduct for staff, which is basically just a set of guidelines by which we administer and manage staff grievances and complaints. Then we also had a child safeguarding policy, which gives guidance in ensuring a caring, safe environment for children as we work with them. It also provides procedures of protecting them, also the Connect staff and volunteers in all child-related programming activities. Then also, to add on to that, we had our open door policy, where we were saying any staff member or a student or a client can approach the director to express any opinion they may have or communicate any complaints that they may have. If you can go to the next slide, Morgani. Okay, so the challenges that we are facing before the coming in of safeguarding The first one is that we had no systematic monitoring and evaluation of our performance in respect of safeguarding. Then more focus was on checking past performance and protection of connect assets without considering the risk associated with employing new staff. We were not really doing thorough checks and balances. So again, there was no accountability. Then as for our board, they were not really concerned about protection of clients unless if there were adverse issues raised by our stakeholders. Then community work, the organization did not appreciate the importance of safeguarding protection, safeguarding program participants, that is at community level. So those were some of the challenges that we were facing before we instituted safeguarding in our programs. If you can go to the next slide, Morgan. Okay, so now we are now looking at what is now different about this initiative. First of all, safeguarding added more value to connect work, thereby improving quality of service provision. It also resulted in about 6 members of staff who took part in an online training that is sexual exploitation and abuse. Then also, what was different about this initiative, as the Gabriela mentioned before, she managed to guide us in coming up with a comprehensive work plan for all safeguarding activities. Then also, to demonstrate that we are now serious about safeguarding, we then went on to develop our safeguarding commitment statement, which is very loud and clear. It appears on all our IEC materials in the form of posters, flyers, and banners. And to say that that commitment is also available in vernacular language. Then again, we embarked on awareness sessions on safeguarding, where we were targeting the board, staff, and community program participants. Then again, we promoted the use of reporting mechanisms, which includes our toll-free telephone line, our mobile telephones, suggestion box, letters, and use of focus group discussions just to get a feel of any safeguarding issues that may be being faced by our clients, our program participants. So in doing this, we also uphold our core values of confidentiality and transparency. Then to add on to that, we instituted the use of a complaints log sheet, where we record all complaints that we receive. We use it as a monitoring tool to track each and every complaint to ensure that it is dealt with. Then lastly, we now work to ensure that we give feedback to complainants once the case has been concluded, so that all our groups feel safe and confident in our system. We also work to see that all complaints are dealt with in the shortest possible time. Okay, so one main impact, the main impact on policy reviews, safeguarding helped us to relook at issues so that we add value to our programming. These policies are reviewed annually and modified to reflect changes in circumstances. For example, we have section 11 of our safeguarding policy, which was reviewed. It now reflects the grievance record keeping through the use of complaint log sheet that I spoke about earlier, and also ensuring that safeguarding of program participants during times of emergencies and crisis is done. We find that a lot of women and girls are vulnerable to abuse in times of emergency. Therefore, we put in place measures to ensure that they are protected during such times. I'll go to the next slide, Logan. Okay, now we are looking at safe recruitment. We managed to review our recruitment practices to ensure that we recruit employees who have a clean record of child abuse, exploitation, and corrupt activities, where we now verify employment history of each candidate, seek for police clearance. Our policy explicitly states that we do not employ people with a record of child abuse. And then we also go on to assess potential employees' knowledge, general knowledge on safeguarding issues, which is part of the interview checklist as well. And then all our officers are held accountable for issues to do with child protection. Okay, then on the code of conduct, this basically includes a set of guidelines by which we administer and manage staff grievance and complaints. So we have the grievance handling procedure, which is both informal and formal. And then we opened up space for staff, clients, students, and beneficiaries to communicate their issues. This resulted in a safe space for reporting any grievances and complaints. Then measures to be taken as a result of misconduct, should that happen. This is done in a fair manner, in a consistent manner, effectively and expeditiously. Okay, so team, the next part will be presented by my colleague Lynette. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So I will talk about safeguarding program issues. Now we are looking at how safeguarding was being mainstreamed in project activities. Can we have the next slide? Okay, so after the capacity strengthening and capacity building we received from Bekezela, we had to make a number of appointments in terms of having safeguarding focal persons. So at board level, we now have 2 safeguarding focal persons who are all females and 1 at secretariat level. And after the training from the consultant, we also did some refresher training and training sessions for board staff and also the project participants at community level, which then resulted in a lot of new insights and which motivated them on identifying and making sure that issues of safeguarding are taken seriously. What we are also doing as a good practice is for next, we are ensuring that during every monthly staff communication meeting, management meeting, or board meeting, we have safeguarding as an agenda item. So having it as an agenda item also ensures that we do monitor our performance in relation to safeguarding. As alluded to earlier on, the staff participated in training or in sexual exploitation and abuse. And what we are also doing when we do proposal development for different grants, we are ensuring that we include safeguarding components in it. And over and above all issues of gender sensitivity, we are also taking them on board because at times when there is no gender sensitivity, there is potential harm to the client. So sensitivity, gender sensitivity, have made female leaders and female project participants to be confident about their different roles and responsibilities. Okay, so at program participant level, we did a number of, we did awareness raising through having safeguarding commitment statements. These are distributed at community level. At our connected premises, we have the safeguarding commitment statement in each and every office, by the foyer, by the reception, in the counseling rooms, and in the training rooms, we have the commitment. This will also enable that the clientele that we say they will come in and see that we are really serious about safeguarding, and if they have any issues, they are free to report. The safeguarding flyers are distributed to the clients, to the program participants, and they are also available in the native language. Another activity that we keep doing to continue raising awareness is that of in-house training of board and staff on safeguarding on a regular basis, and then a special session on safeguarding during meetings. Then at community level, because we also want to ensure that the community cadres or community volunteers that we have in the program also ensure safeguarding of the participants or of the survivors that we face. So at community level, trained safeguarding focal persons. Next one. So we then developed a sound complaint handling mechanism as a result of the interaction we had with the safeguarding consultant. So what we are now doing is that complaints are reported to the safeguarding focal person through the community-based focal person. If a survivor is a complaint, they'll just report to the community-based focal person. We also have suggestion boxes and even direct reporting of issues through phone calls to the safeguarding focal person. We then give feedback to the one who has raised a safeguarding issue through direct engagement or focus group discussion, and even engagement of staff on the complaint raised. And above all, we record the complaint raised in the complaint log sheet. The next one, I think my time is running out. Right, so we also have good best practices that we are not actually living in safeguarding. For example, in our training session, we do post-evaluation with students, post-evaluation with clients, mainstreaming safeguarding in consultancy, and having the open door policy. And then I think the next slide. Right, so our next stage will ensure budgeting for safeguarding training. Will ensure that the safeguarding focal person has got opportunity to always talk about safeguarding issues, and ensuring that we continue to make sure that safeguarding issues are sustainable in all connect work, just like it is shown on the slide. And we also need to review our counseling training to include safeguarding as the trained counselors are expected to ensure quality service delivery. So lastly, what we are simply saying is connect in the next slide is that we want to see, this is our safeguarding commitment statement, which I think will show. Can we go to the next one?
I just wonder if we could round it up in the next couple of minutes, just to allow time for some questions at the end. I don't want to hurry you up or undervalue your contribution, but it'd be great if we could wrap it up in a couple of minutes.
Okay, all
Thank
right.
you.
So let me quickly conclude. Let's go to the last slide, Morgan. So we are saying safeguarding is a process. It is a process. We can see, let's have the slide with the pictures of the jacaranda trees and the rocks. So we are saying safeguarding, it is a process. We want to realize the benefits or the outcomes of effective managing or effective implementation of safeguarding issues, just like those paper flowers. But it's a process. Time and again, we review our plans, we review our policies, to make sure that we do the checks and balances, so that at the end of the day, our safeguarding is sound and balanced, just like those balancing work. So thank you so much, and over to you, Leslie.
Fantastic, and thank you all very much too. It's really, I wondered if we almost could have done the order of these presentations in the other way, because really the people on the ground, the practitioners there, like Annette and Wynette, are the real, I felt bad trying to condense that bit, because applying these principles on the ground can be where a lot of the learning is, the terminology that is used, and then how that's gone back up the chain, so to speak. So thank you to all the presenters. We've now got about 10 minutes or so left of the call to have any questions, have a bit of a discussion. We've actually had 2 questions come in from Irene, and that's a good place to start, I think. And just on this first question, the first question really relates to reporting channels and that you used at Connect. So whoever the best person at Connect is to respond to that would be great. But just, and then in relation to that, did you receive more complaints as a result of this? But also just to be aware that not to divulge any confidential information about any complaints that you may have received. This is a safeguarding call. We should apply safeguarding principles, especially around the confidentiality of anything that may have happened within your organization. Connect, but it would be great to hear about what were the safe reporting channels that you applied, and did you see an increase in complaints as a result of this process? I don't know if Dennis or Annette or Wynette might be able to respond to that.
Okay, thank you so much. So the reporting channels that we have in place, we have the suggestion boxes. So we ensure that each and every time we have a community session, we have in place a suggestion box. When we do the training sessions, we also have a suggestion box. And then we also have that suggestion box. Would at times some clients would want to be protected from they would want to remain anonymous. So we make use of suggestion boxes, we make use of the toll-free facilities, as explained earlier on. We also make use of verbal, that is face-to-face giving a complaint. And then we also make use of letters that are obviously dropped in the suggestion boxes. So what we have realized over the years of implementing safeguarding issues is that we have received a number of feedback, not complaints necessarily, but they were mainly feedback in terms of how to continue improving in our work and how to continue ensuring that we keep providing information to our program participants and everyone that is there. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to hear that.
Allow me to add that allow me to add that as the staff members, this experience, this process also helped us to appreciate that we needed to be more sensitive in whatever we are doing in our interaction with the clients, with the staff, and wherever. That way, I think it also helped in reducing the number of clients or of complaints, sorry. In addition to that, the pleasant surprise we got was that people from the community, our rural communities and our setting, they are real disadvantaged. So from those communities, we were not really aware that they had issues which they also wanted to put across to us as the programmers. But through this process, this openness helped them, and we begin to see here and there, we begin to see issues they raise. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dennis. It's interesting to see. I mean, I know from my own experience, especially in small organizations, issues of confidentiality and trust of where the complaint can be channeled, can be challenging. So it's great to hear your frontline experience there. And another question that also came in around, which was around signposting, I guess. Can you show some examples? What are different from wrongdoing signposts? What's the difference between those? I don't know, maybe Dennis, you're again well placed to answer that one, or maybe someone else.
Someone else.
Okay, good. Anybody who's stepping in there? Annette, there we go. Sorry, say that again.
Let's hear from Bekezela.
Bekezela.
So if I could see the signpost, can you show example? Are they
Says,
different? Oh, the signposting I was referring to was directing partners to information resources or hubs. I think Matthew then did put one up, like the Safeguarding Supporting Hub. I think also the Bond UK site is has good materials. So it wasn't really about the wrongdoing or the right doing, but just signposting people to where they can find additional resources. I hope I have clarified. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I know that Safeguarding Support actually have some local country offices in Ethiopia and in Nigeria, I think. So anybody from those countries, I know of some of our Ethiopian partners are on the call today. Wani Gabriel, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Matthew. I hope I'm audible enough.
We can hear you well, yes.
Thank you. I have a question to Yvonne. I am greatly impressed with the number of partners that you are working with in Zimbabwe. In Gol in South Sudan, we are also working with few partners, but we have been really having challenges working with them. So I don't know what experience that you could share with us in terms of balancing between compliance to safeguarding commitment and the amount of time that we give, because from Emma's presentation, she talked about safeguarding as something that requires time, but also accompaniment. But sometimes when we tend to push a lot on our partners, it creates issues with our relationship. So I just want to understand, having worked with so many partners, having different capacities, so what experience can we learn as Gol South Sudan? Thank you.
Who's looking to ask? Margaret,
I'll respond.
Okay.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Wani, for the question. So yes, we've got a very big portfolio of partners and they all have different capacities. And how do you manage this? I think the first thing that we do as Trócaire Zimbabwe is we have a job share around accompanying the partners. So when it comes to ensuring safeguarding compliance, it will ordinarily sit with the program manager. And while that was sitting with the program manager, it was also becoming a bit challenging, like you are alluding to, Wani. So what you've recently done is also a partnerships advisor or an advisor who's responsible for partner capacity building. So now the other bit around safeguarding then sits with the partner capacity advisor, and then the program manager takes on the other compliance issues. So that job share has worked effectively for us. And then how do you ensure that while we're trying to ensure our partners are compliant, they are also able to deliver on their program. So the other programming bit and accompaniment is then left to the technical advisors. What also makes it really work for us is the mix of partners. Like I indicated, it's a mix of partners. We have long-term partners whom we could almost sit back and say they're already perfect in terms of their safeguarding issues. And then there are some that need more accompaniment. Over.
Maybe,
Thank
ma'am, if I could come
Yes,
in there as well,
please.
just because I think we're hearing from Zimbabwe. I mean, I think in Trócaire, all of our work is with partner organizations. So every country where we work, we have a high number of partners. We don't directly self-implement. And I suppose we are on a journey with our partner organizations on this. As Yvonne said, some partners have already lots of safeguarding elements in place. Some we are engaging with new partner organizations. And so we start out with, looking at our, the assessment tool, understanding where each partner is, doing elements of training. And so this is why we brought this model together as well, is because we recognize that we don't actually have the time that's needed and necessarily in all locations to actually accompany partners along. So we were hoping that we recognize that if there are some local expertise available, if organizations are working with 3 or 4 different donor organizations, maybe there's an element of getting some funding, but then who do you go to get that safeguarding support? And that's where building that in-country expertise is really important as well. So yeah, we're trying different models, we're trying different things. We recognize that we have reached some partners more than others, but we commit in every country office to try and support a minimum of 2 to 3 partners each year. And so slowly but surely we're I suppose hopefully being able to accompany each partner at some point. That's really the model that we're trying to work. Yeah, and great to see the experience and the work that's been done in Zimbabwe. I think it's a real sign of how this has been working well for us. Yeah.
Okay, after again, brilliant, thank you. And Wani, did that answer your question?
Yes,
Yes,
I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you'll probably have to make this the last question, looking at the time. But there's a question coming from Akalu, which I think is actually a very relevant question for partners on the ground. If the implementers don't abide with the safeguarding police, do we freeze the grants or any funds, and what measures do you take? I'll maybe just give a very quick response from Children in Crossfire's perspective, that I think it's about balance. We certainly don't want to dictate policies from here as a tick box exercise. That very much came through in the research that Emma shared. But we also want to see a commitment from our partners to move along a pathway towards a culture of safeguarding in their organizations and in their programs. So I think it's the English expression might be the carrot and stick approach. The carrot is very much to incentivize and support and encourage, but also if you're in a situation, especially in vulnerable communities where staff and the organization is not putting measures in place to protect people and within their own organization as well, then certainly, we'd want to do everything to support them to do so, but at some point, you probably do have to draw a line if something's acceptable or not acceptable. Anybody want to add to that quickly, Margaret?
I think I haven't come across an organization who hasn't been committed to keeping people safe as part of the work, otherwise they wouldn't be doing the work.
Yes, very, very true indeed. Yes, yes.
And I think so if we find that there is an organization that haven't met safeguarding standards, it's often because there are barriers there and they're finding challenges in doing that. So that is about sitting down and listening and hearing and understanding what are those barriers and maybe trying to find solutions to that together. I think that's really the starting point in relation to that. Yeah.
Thank you. And maybe I'll just squeeze the one last minute question came in there before we tie things up from Lontia about where does the community fit in this process of safeguarding. I mean, in a way, they are the center of the safeguarding moves. We all know that women and children experience violence as part of their lives so much. Children in Crossfire work in schools. We know that violence against children in schools is prevalent. it's not what we do. We're not a safeguarding organization, but absolutely for us, the messages of safeguarding, the messages of positive discipline in schools, posters in schools, working with parents as well to understand how children are and what helps them develop are all part of preventing and reducing, I suppose. So again, I don't know if any of the other practitioners want to add to that a little bit. Okay, I'll keep it.
Right.
Margaret, there we go. You're muted.
Community is totally at the heart of our safeguarding work, and obviously, you know, putting our policies and systems in place are not enough. It is about having that communication with communities around, you know, what safeguarding is, how our staff or our representatives should be behaving as they deliver or as they engage with communities, and also about, you know, what mechanisms work best for communities to raise those concerns. It's not about imposing, this is how we want you to raise complaints. It's about what works best for you. So I think putting communities at the heart of that is really important as well. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. So no more hands raised. I'm aware we're a couple of minutes over time, so maybe that's a good place to finish. Thank you to Dóchas and Morgaine for organizing this session and all the other sessions, and for all our presenters, Margaret for bringing everybody together, Yvonne and all the people that connect there, and the researchers. Thank you very much. Thank you for the rest of you for attending. I hope you've learned something, and we see you at the next one, hopefully. Thank you very much.